Hi there, and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. It is another bonus preview show for you tonight, guys. We're going to have a wee look at the Livingston game tomorrow night, which I should mention has a 6 o'clock kickoff. I think a few people have been caught out with that. So 6 p.m. tomorrow at the Tony Macaroni Stadium. As I've said to you before, guys, it's not just the pod that we have here at Gersnet. We've got the forums, there's articles, Frankie's got his social media page, obviously. There's a history archive on the website, so get yourself over there if you can. If this is your first time listening to the pod, we would ask you to subscribe and put the word out in social media. That would be great. The podcast is live tonight. It's a Tuesday night, the night before the game. However, the pod will be available to download and stream on a variety of platforms from tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, all the places that you get your podcast, guys. And now the intro's out of the way, I can bring my guest in for this evening, which is Alex Anderson. Did you see my lighting go just as I went on air there?
All I can say, Colin, you're not Dougie, mate.
No, I know.
Dougie, he stepped up to a new level, didn't he? I found that quite intimidating with the lighting and even he's got the top on. We just beat a Belgian team in an epic, and Dougie's there with the Bruges, Scott Nisbet top on. He's professional.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I mean, it was like Blackpool eliminations, wasn't it? It was quite impressive.
he's got the looks to carry it off,
Me and David it looked like we were sitting in a darkened room compared to him. Anyway, how's your week been so far? What you been up to?
Not bad, mate. Not bad. I was quite enjoying the heart being down a few notches, the heart rate being down a few notches over the weekend, the Rangers free weekend. I think I actually quite liked it, and after the tension we've had recently. But one thing I've got to say, every time I come on here, I forget to ask you about your props. I'm saying to my wife tonight, I must ask Colin about his props, and she's like, "Well, I think, of course, our antibiotics will take care of that." She says, "No, his props, the props," and I see the same ones you had on Sunday.
Yeah, well, I've decided that until that thing John Gregg done with his beard.
Yes.
Just keep growing it until. So I've been sort of mixing the tops, but now we're in the sort of latter stages of the Europa League. I'm keeping it up there until we go out. So it'll stay there. So hopefully it'll stay there until May and Gdansk and all that kind of thing. But we'll see. And how you coping with lockdown? I mean, it feels like we've turned a wee corner now. We're into March, I think. There does feel. I don't know. The mood seems to have been lightened a wee bit, and there's been announcements that the restrictions will be getting lifted and all the rest of it.
It's much needed as well, Colin. It's kind of a wee bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and literally first thing in the morning, kind of later on at night, a bit of light. Full stop. Yeah, nice and sunny, and it's making a hell of a difference to everybody who's kind of been cooped up for the last year. And I think there's an easy metaphor in there, but it's starting to feel like a proper spring again, for the first time in about 10 years, So I'm quite enjoying it, mate. How's things through your neck of the woods?
Well, yeah, I mean, the daffs are just about to pop up where I am, and I always feel good at this time of year, you know what I mean? So it definitely helps the mood. When I go for my run at night, I'm noticing wee hints of spring. Should point out that myself and John McCallum were on the pod a couple of weeks ago there previewing one of the games, and he was talking about the daffs at the bottom of his garden. Well, I can confirm one of them has bloomed, one of them is out. He sent me a photo the other day there. You know what I mean? And I know it's only middle-aged folk like us that are going to appreciate that, Alex. You know what I mean? All the youngins are like, what's he talking about the daffs for?
When you talking about that, I switched off, mate. That was at the end of my interest. Tell us about the daffs.
The daffs. It's my favourite time of the year, actually, because you've got a good 6 months of light nights in front of you. Alex, so, I mean, before we get on to tomorrow's game, I think it would be nice to sort of go over an announcement today from Liverpool Football Club in terms of Ian St John, and Steven Gerrard was asked about it at his press conference today. Before we go on, the way he was asked, I should say, I think it was David Tanner. Disgusting, you know what I mean? I mean, there was no, it's been announced that Ian St John has passed away. It was, a Liverpool legend has passed away. And it's a Scottish footballing legend. Who could it be, Stevie? Who could it be? The sort of way that he teased the question out, I thought was really, really poor.
I was looking at it on YouTube, and I just went down through the comments to make sure it wasn't just me. A few people had pointed it out. I thought it was pretty sick, to be quite frank. Liverpool legend talking about another Liverpool legend, and to break it to him that way, I thought it actually followed on. I watched a bit of the League Cup final on Sunday, and I think it's becoming a thing these days. If commentators can get, if interviewers can get, a footballer to cry You know, they feel as if somehow they've achieved their job. You know, like Callum Davidson, etc., was at the point of tears, but they kept pushing him. Can you think of any family members that you really want to think? It's pretty disgusting, to be honest. Yeah. And I think, as we were saying off air with Frankie just before we come on there, the way Steven Gerrard handled it was absolute class. But that was out of order, and I think the Rangers would be having a word with Tanner. You know, afterwards.
I think the way to me, if he wanted to raise the issue, then that's fair enough. But I think he could have identified who it was very early on. When you consider that Steven Gerrard has worked with Scottish footballing legends, he played under Kenny Dalglish. I think if you look at Steven Gerrard, he actually freezes for a few seconds as if, am I getting told that Kenny Dalglish is away here? You know what I mean? I thought it was really, really poor, but won't dwell on it. What I do want to dwell on though is, I mean, if there's any sort of younger pups watching tonight, they'll probably not get what we're talking about. But, you know, before Soccer AM and all that kind of stuff, in the 80s, you know, Saturday mornings meant Saint and Greavesy. And I mean, it's for people that weren't there, you know, as I said, for younger generations, they probably won't get it or understand it. You know, it was two middle-aged guys. You know, when you look at Soccer AM, it was all fairly younger folk. It was a sort of more youth-orientated, if you know what I mean. But Saint and Greavesy, two sort of ex-players in their mid-40s, one, you know, who's kind of quite pot-bellied and bald, and, you know, he's had personal issues with alcohol and all the rest of it. But it worked. It really was. It was must-see TV back in the day.
Oh, it was. I remember sitting watching it with my dad. You know, I was kind of in my early teens at the time, into probably hitting my early 20s, and it was just it was must watch television. Yeah. You know, and I think it's, when you look at it from today's perspective, it doesn't seem like a big deal. But you have to be able to remember what it was like back then. And I'm going to go down the old route of talking about there was only so many live games on the telly every year, and everything was pretty staid the way it's presented. And the two of them, I think at first it was maybe a bit off script, you know, and then they realised that was a winning formula. You know, and as you say, you know, Jimmy Greaves famously had a few problems with the drink and what have you. And he sometimes turned up like he was just out his bed, you know, with the cardigan on, the cup of tea and stuff like that. Whereas, you know, Saint was looking immaculate as ever.
Immaculate, yeah.
You know, but it was great television, and I think for me probably the best television programme ever, just because of my age and what have you, is probably Gazzetta Football Italia. You know, and that followed just after Saint and Greavesy had stopped.
Yeah.
You know, and this is kind of before satellite television had taken over, and it's the days where you only had 3 or 4 channels. But I don't think Gazzetta Football Italia would have been not allowed, but it wouldn't have been designed the same way, because it was like spoofs, and James Richardson was really sarcastic all the time. And I think they were kind of given license to go ahead and do that because of Saint Greavesy. Yeah. Ian St John was a straight man, you know, to a lot, but he had that right dirty laugh because he was loving it, you know. Yeah. A lot of the jokes you look back on weren't the most PC, but at the time it was must-watch television. And it was a really new thing, you know. But it's really sad. It's like we were talking about Maradona a few months back when he went. It's a bit your youth is gone there as well, you know. Yeah,
gone. I mean, there's a good piece in Athletic today. Jim Rosenthal, you know, again, it's probably predominantly older folk that will remember him. But he used to be a presenter on ITV, and he wrote a really nice piece in Athletic today about him. And he made a good point that I hadn't considered. You know, he said when you consider the amount of former footballers that go into the media now, that's a genuine option. You know, it was maybe a bit of a trailblazer back then. Footballers either went into coaching or managing, or, you know, got a pub or a shop or something. You know, they got their testimonial, took their money and set up a business. So it was maybe a wee bit of a trailblazer. There's another incident with Ian St John that I want to bring up though. That's quite funny. I mean, my first cup final was the Skull Cup final in 1987, and so I was at the game. I was in the Rangers end. I was behind the goal in the Rangers end, and I'd got my mum and dad to record it. Now I watched that tape 100 times. First cup final, you know, I watched that tape until it had worn out. And I am pretty sure when Willie Faulkner scores to make it 3-2, that Ian St John lets out a roar. You know, he like a proper. He's got up his feet and cheered kind of roar. And I always kind of pissed me off a wee bit because I quite like Ian St John, but I mean, I believe he was a Motherwell man, but it's quite a funny moment, and if anybody gets the opportunity to look at it on YouTube, I suggest you do, because you do off sort of mic, you hear him in the background giving a big roar. That's one of my favourite days ever at the football. And on my way up to that game, my mate and I were supposed to be on the Old Rangers end that day, but we actually met a couple of boys from Northern Ireland. We were getting the train up to Colin, so that there was this Stranraer train. And these boys were desperate to get on the Patterson, and they swapped us their ticket. They had main stand tickets, and it was practically director's box. So we sat there, you know, just like
the whole game unfolded in front of us, absolute epic. But I remember when Willie Faulkner scored, I thought, well, that's it. I didn't realise there was actually a bit more time left than I realised. But Robert Fleck, I think, was equalised, but we equalised and away we went anyway and won the game. But I know I think I remember I would do the same. Like we're talking about, there wasn't that many live games that day, so I would have recorded it as well and worn that tape thin. And I think I remember what you're talking about. I tried to get a chance to watch it and try and see if it was on YouTube before. I never got a chance. Yeah. But I think Saint was a proper Motherwell man. I know we like to see agendas. Both sides of the old firm think the other MD doesn't support us, supports the other side. But I think it was a genuine Motherwell man, because the Motherwell team he grew up with was a bit like what St Johnstone are doing just now. I think he said that in one of the interviews when he was a boy. He remembers him winning the Scottish Cup and the League Cup. Yeah,
that I read today. He was at Hampden watching Motherwell lift the Scottish Cup. I think it was like 52, 53 or something. Aye, like that.
And I think one of the stories, it might be apocryphal, but a story that always sticks with me. I don't know where I heard it. It was if it's not true, it's not true. But 65, when they won the FA Cup with Liverpool in 65, which, by the way, at the time, he scored the winner after extra time against Leeds United. And by the way, they'd won the league the season before, but this was, in those days, that was the equivalent of winning the European Cup for English football. Yeah. If you hadn't won the FA Cup, you were nobody down south. And this was, it's a day that kind of turned Liverpool around. They pushed them towards being the club they are now. But apparently in the tunnel, on the way out, Billy Bremner, fellow Scottish international, Saint just walked up to him and just said, something along the lines of, becoming the hard man today, and just stuck one on him in the tunnel before they got on the park. So I think he was a man who just, picked a side and stuck with it, and he knew how to get what he wanted. So if he wants to cheer on Willie Faulkner, that's fine, Saint, that's fine.
Yeah, I think people forget that Liverpool were in the second division when he signed for them, you know what I mean? And I think he is quite an integral player in their history. And that's really sad in itself. But for myself, it's a wee bit of my sort of childhood in terms of St Greaves and stuff like that. So really, really sad news today. So I thought it would be nice to talk about that before we moved on to tomorrow's game. And before we talk about tomorrow's game, Alex, I'll have to highlight that Rangers Picks is available as per usual. So if you want the opportunity to win a share of £1,000 prize pool, log on to www.rangerspicks.com. Complete a series of questions, I think it's about 12 or 13, about the game tomorrow night. It provides wee hints, as I've said before, guys. So it'll ask you things like, how many corners will Rangers get, how many free kicks, blah, blah, blah. And it'll provide wee pointers as to how many we've got in previous games and all that kind of thing. So fill out your questions, send it in, and if you get enough correct, you'll win a share of £1,000. The more supporters that play, the more money the club gets, so bear that in mind. You have to be over 18 to play. I say that every week, please. You have to be over 18 to play. Terms and conditions apply, and please always remember, guys, to play responsibly. Right, Alex, so now my contractual obligations are out the way, as I keep on saying. On to tomorrow night's game. Now, the last time we met at the infamously named Tony Macaroni Stadium, it was nothing each, and I remember at the time a few grumblings that this is us back to how we were previously, blah blah blah, and even some suggestions that Stevie G should go. October, we beat them 2-0 October at Ibrox. Jermaine Defoe with that outrageous goal there that day. But those were both under Gary Holt, who's obviously since moved on and has been replaced by David Martindale. So Gerrard today in his press conference, he's sort of saying today, he expects it to be a bit more open in terms of previous visits here, because under Gary Holt used to go there and they just basically parked the bus and made it really, really difficult for us to play. Obviously, the park comes into the equation as well. It's one of those horrible plastic pitches. So it's a ground that we've kind of struggled on recently. But as I say, Gerrard thinks it might be a different challenge tomorrow. They might be a wee bit more open. Is that how you see it?
I don't know. I think we're probably going to talk about this, but it's down as supporters. Rangers don't want to worry about Livingston's mindset. They want to just go out and be themselves, because these days we're kind of cutting loose. The last few games we're banging the goals in. We're looking like we could beat anybody. I hope we can continue that, but I think we're worried as supporters how Livingston are going to react to Sunday. And I don't think for a second Stevie G was trying to patronise David Martindale with kind of mind games today, saying come out, come at us, Yeah. And I certainly don't think David Martindale would be stupid enough to do that. But I know what you're saying. They didn't really have a lot of ambition under Gary Holt. Remember, they were celebrating. Was it David Martindale? Was it somebody was celebrating on the Livingston bench.
They went after Nut at the full-time whistle. That really pissed me off that day, I have to be honest. I was in that, because you're spitting feathers anyway, but when I saw him doing that, I was like, just that's raging, you know what I mean? So, aye. And it probably was him. I think it was him when you think about it.
Because it was a proper junior style roar. It was a proper in your face, you know. I just let it go. It didn't bother me in the least, you know what I mean? I'm really cool about these things. But it was a kind of brutal game. But it's up to us, you know. I hope we've been practicing with the gravel on the pitches up at Auchenhowie for the last couple of days over the free weekend. But I think Livingston are one of these clubs that are a bit like they have this kind of image that they just want to make rent. You know, the team they've got to know, they don't care about you. You almost feel like you're a bit snobby or snooty being on the same pitch as them. They're kind of just ready to bring you down to their size, you know, which is, I think, is a bit of a misnomer, because they've got a lot of guys in there who know what they're doing. There's a lot of guys about 28, 20, 27, 29 years old, like Jason Holt. I thought Jason Holt was older than that. He's about 28. Then they've got Effie Ambrose and all these kind of guys. That are they've got something to prove, but they've been places as well where they've learnt stuff. And David Martindale is no mug. He might come across as a kind of gallus, kind of Glasgow guy, but he's tactically pretty sound, pretty astute. And he got a paneling from a few pundits on Sunday for sticking Marvin Bartley out on the left-hand side to pick up the man who scored the only goal of the game, Sean Rooney. So I don't know if maybe that's kind of undermined. Maybe that's a hit team morale or whatever. I don't know, but I would like us to get out there, just get in about them straight away and just try and probe them and see if they're on a bit of a downer from Sunday. Been in this situation before when we played Hamilton. I was in the preview show with yourself. We played Hamilton at Hamilton last time out. They just lost a 6-pointer against Ross County midweek after being 1-0 up, and I said that's an absolute disaster for them. There's no way they're going to get over that in the space of a few days. The last team they want to play is Rangers, so I'm going to shut my mouth here because I can see it would be. I think this would actually suit this Livingston team to have Rangers coming. They'll need something to be feeling. How can you bounce back for a cup final? Well, beating one of the old firm would certainly help, but they've got such depth as well. You know, they changed about 8 players when they played Celtic. Between they played Celtic at Parkhead on Saturday, drew with them, then they drew with them again midweek, and I think they changed about 8 players because they had the semi-final of the League Cup against St Mirren coming up. Did
they not beat them? Oh no, they drew with them. I think they said, aye, sorry.
Aye, no, it felt like defeats for Celtic anyway. Morally, what have you? But they know what they're doing. They know how to bounce back, and I just hope we go out and we play our game, because we should be able to ride over the top of anybody these days.
And I mean, that's the thing, when Martindale first came into the job, I was looking at the form today. I mean, over the last 6 games, really patchy. But over the last 10 games, they're sitting behind Celtic in 3rd place in terms of their form. At one point, they were on a really impressive run, you know what I mean? And you fancied them going into those games against Celtic, you know what I mean? The way Celtic were playing, you fancied them to get something, and that's how it turned out. And so the form's dipped a wee bit, a cup final thing, and that just makes me wonder if, what team are you going to get? Are you going to get a team reacting and wounded, as you say, and coming out the way maybe Hamilton done? Or are you going to get a team that actually are starting to realise that they've peaked and they've had their wee run, and it's starting to come down the way, and it makes you don't really know what to expect, if you know what I mean?
Aye, that's it. Been thinking about it all day, and I'm the same as yourself. I go one way, then I go the other. They had a bad February. They started off in February. They beat Aberdeen 2-0 up at Pittodrie, and they do things like that. Like we beat Aberdeen twice at Pittodrie, but only by the 1 goal each time. Livingston got up there and beat them 2-0. They beat Hibs 3-0 at Easter Road. We haven't done that this season. I think it's because with us, we're trying to spread the results. We try to spread the wins evenly across the whole season. Somebody like Livingston can have a bit of a slump, and then they come back with a bang like that if somebody underestimates them. So we've got to be careful. I was thinking exact same as yourself. Was February, the rest of February, where they started slipping up? They lost to St Johnstone in the league. That was their first loss in 15. I think they got hammered at Dundee United, and I think at one point they had more players in the park than Dundee United. They got hammered 3-0 at Tannadice, and I don't know if that was just about the League Cup final. It was just about they had their mind on that. Once they made the final, that was all they could think about. And now tomorrow night is a case of, right, that didn't happen. We didn't play well, and they didn't play well. I think that they're being accused of thinking more about St Johnstone, thinking more about stopping St Johnstone on Sunday than about being themselves. And the bits of it I watched most of the game. They seemed like they were kind of a bit reticent, a bit more defensive minded than they should have been. They should have went to St Johnstone a bit more.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that's throwing a bit of spanner on the works. Maybe psychologically that's got to them, mood wise that's got to them. But I'm also thinking they get back out there tomorrow night and think, this is our bread and butter. This is what we do. Like we're on the cusp of sealing 55. We're going to win 55. So we're kind of thinking ahead to an unbeaten run, going through the whole season unbeaten.
Yeah.
I think Livy are also the same kind of thing. They're going to make top 6. They're practically sealed it already, and now they're thinking they could catch Aberdeen. And that's the next target. They got a few games in hand. They could get to within 2 points of Aberdeen if they beat us and whoever else they've got to play.
Yeah.
So it's just how that setback on Sunday has affected them. And I'm no offence to them, but I'm hoping it's affected them badly.
I'd agree with that. And Martindale himself, I mean, I don't know how you feel about him, Alex, but I find him quite a fascinating character. You know what I mean? I know he's had his troubles. I think he was in jail for sort of drug dealing. And I'm not a big fan of the drug dealers, by the way, having had to live next door to a couple. But, he is. I just find him quite a fascinating person. And, Govan Boy, he was on the books at the club back in the day. Didn't make it. I think he's admitted himself that, he didn't apply himself. I think he did, break his leg or something. And he signed on at Rangers as a YTS and then went for a game with his mates and broke his leg and that sort of knackered his chances. But, he's someone that's bounced back from real disappointment. In his personal life and a real challenging time, and it just seems to have come from nowhere. And when Livingston were at that sort of run, you were looking at him thinking, he has got that sort. He has a sort of rough diamond, a bit rough around the edges, but you have to sort of admire what he's doing there just now.
Oh, it's a match made in heaven, or made in the jail. I don't know what you want to say for Livingston and Davy Martindale, because I think. We remember Livingston when they did win the League Cup and they qualified for Europe the previous season. Back in the early 2000s, just through their league position, it was a kind of on the up. It was a great project, and then I think things got pretty real for them pretty quickly, and they've come back almost a much more kind of gritty, like their park, no pun intended. They've come back much more kind of gritty as a team, as a club. They don't really care about anybody. They don't care about the fact they've not got a very big support. They don't care about the fact you don't like their pitch. I mean, me and you, we don't like their pitch. It's just like, they just don't care what anybody thinks about them. And I kind of admire that. And I think they've been through the mill as a club, and Davy Martindale's been through the mill as a person. And like Livingston, a lot of that was his own fault. And there's a lot for people, but he's owned up to that. I
think that's a good thing about it. You know what I mean?
It's a difficult balance to strike talking about the things. I think there was, when he was doing his fit and proper person test, I felt as if a lot of the stuff about him was almost bordering on kind of romanticising it. Bad boy going good and all that. And he was the last guy to romanticise it. It's like, I don't know the exact details of what he's done, but like I say, drugs are involved. I don't know, fraud, whatever. He's not proud of it in any way, but he's not going to shy away from letting people know. What he's done, but I think sometimes the victims of these things getting forgotten. They're a kind of side story. And there'll be people out there who have suffered as a consequence. But he's done his time. He served a good time in prison. It wasn't a wee short sentence. It wasn't a slap in the wrist. And he's, in a way, if you like, we've got a manager who's driven to win a league title, and Davy Martindale seems equally driven to kind of rebuild his life. And he's doing it through football. But when they won that game up at Aberdeen, up at Pittodrie, I think it was just after he'd passed his fit and proper persons thing, and he was saying it was like the greatest night of his life, or greatest achievement, or whatever. And they haven't won a game since then, and I don't know if it was a bit kind of the fairy tale has come to fruition a month too early. So no harm to the guy. I hope he does great. I hope he goes on, because I've got a lot of respect just for the lower leagues in Scotland, the juniors, the organisation of football teams, the tactical mindedness you get at the lower league, especially us having been in it ourselves, on the journey back. So I have a lot of time for what Livingston do and what the guy himself has done. But as I say, I just hope it it's no us that are the next victim.
Yeah, the next victims. Yeah, I'd agree with that as well, Alex. On to the squad and the options available tomorrow. Gerrard informed at the presser today that Leo Balogun's struggling for tomorrow. I think it's a muscle injury of some sort. Now, given that at this present moment in time, although it's maybe changed as we've been on air, I don't know. But, there's been no punishment dished out yet to Nathan Patterson for his sort of COVID crimes, shall we call them. Would you expect him to just slot in it right back tomorrow night then?
It's looking awful like it. I thought that last Thursday, I don't know about yourself, we all knew it was something else to watch, but it was one of the most emotional moments, I think, the last 10 years. Just watching that boy coming off the bench, and it wasn't just where he scores the goal and he's like Marco Tardelli after in the 1982 World Cup final, one of the most kind of passionate celebrations you've ever seen in your life, because we knew what he was going through. We knew what that boy had been through. I think it was the way Gerrard... And
to be fair, some of us were putting him through it, because a lot of supporters were saying he should be out of the club.
That's it. And I couldn't see any other way. I couldn't see how the club... I think when the news broke, I was on here with yourself on the pod, and this is my first thought was for his mental health, or for the mental health of all five boys, especially the younger ones. I'm just thinking, because if we got punished because of their actions, or if it led to some sort of, I don't know what's going to happen. Rangers players were going to have to isolate or whatever. If it affected our bid for 55 in any way whatsoever, it's just unfair. The flack they would get, not just for this season, for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it made it so extra emotional when Stevie G came out afterwards, and he did that Walter Smith thing. While he was being told he's up there with Walter Smith, and he was batting it away straight away. He's not having any of that. I am no Walter Smith. I've not won anything. Well, Stephen, see, because you're saying things like that, that's what makes you exactly like Walter Smith. And it was like when Walter Smith, when we were signing Kenny Miller, the rumours were signing Kenny Miller again. I don't know, was it 2008, 2009 Cup final where I was singing, you can shove your Kenny Miller? I wasn't, I'll say that now anyway. But Walter just, carry on. Just, he knew what was best. It's that kind of paternalistic thing almost, when you've got a proper Rangers manager who knows what's best for the club and knows what's best for the player. Stevie G had done the whole thing with Jones and Edmondson, the kind of harsh, there's no way back. And then he's shown his compassionate side. Cynics will say it's because we needed a right back, but he had him on the bench for a reason, and Zungu, and when he told us afterwards about him being a nice boy, for a nice family. Maybe it's because we're older, and I can remember being through doing daft things when I was a teenager myself. So I kind of slag Davy Martindale. I think it really hit home that this was a guy from a city that's exactly the same as Glasgow. Stephen Gerrard, a guy from the city that's exactly the same as Glasgow, and he knows what football means, and he knows what he could do to that boy. To be held up as a scapegoat at the club he loves. And I felt really emotional, because I thought, we've got a manager here who's like diplomat, kind of father figure, the full works. He's making us a family club again, as well as a successful club. That's not to do with Nathan Patterson playing, but I felt it was really emotional, and I'm quite happy for him to be in the team tomorrow night.
I mean, I think you're right about Stephen Gerrard, and I'm not just talking about it in a football sense here. I mean, in a personal capacity, when you're dealing with people at work, leaders and managers and all that kind of thing. In my experience, the best ones, when a big situation happens, they calm it down.
Aye.
They take the heat right out of that situation. They get everyone focused and right, okay, it's not that big a deal, blah, blah, blah. The ones that I don't like so much are the ones that panic and start dishing out blame, saying, you should have done this and you should have done that. And it kind of strikes me that what you're saying is true, that Gerrard just seems to have this natural ability to lead and to manage. And I can't help but feel he's turned the whole situation around, because I think everyone felt he was done. No just Patterson, but all five of them were done. And I still think Zungu's done. I must admit, I think he goes back to his parent club with a thanks but no thanks memo. But, in terms of Patterson, he really has taken the heat out of the situation so much that it feels like it's went completely the other way, and everybody's behind Patterson now. You know what I mean? When from the minute he came on last week, and then 16 seconds after that, when he scored the goal, the whole mood around the situation, from a Rangers supporter's perspective anyway. I know everybody else is crying, conspiracy and all that kind of thing. But from our perspective, he's just turned the whole thing around just by taking the heat out of it, you know, taking a sort of step back and making a decision based on the facts and what's best for the club.
Aye, I think I was even saying over in Antwerp, I'm kind of shouting at the television, I was quite happy. I wouldn't have, you know, the pundits are straight in there, as they have been with Alfredo Morelos for a few years, are straight in there with, that's, you know, Tavernier's injured. Would you believe it? How's Nathan Patterson feeling right now? How's Nathan Patterson? And it's like, right, mention it once maybe, but it was kind of horrible. We're talking about a 19-year-old boy here.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself at the time, I wouldn't have wanted him to come on anyway, because the other thing that's the other perception that Steven Gerrard changed last Thursday night was my perception of Nathan Patterson as a footballer. I just thought he wasn't ready. He was one of these boys that had come through, you know, Howie, whatever. It was, you know, you've got to have a certain amount of young players coming through. But I'd kind of consistently said that Tav was in one position that we didn't have a proper, you know, I wasn't really confident that the boy was ready. I'd only seen him a few times. He'd only played a few times. And I would actually have been happy with Balogun coming on at right back, even if Nathan Patterson had been available. And then on last Thursday night, that gets blown out of the water as well. We never heard from Jordan. I know Balogun picked up an injury, you know, and I love the big guy. I think he's a great player, Balogun. You know, he's been played out of position, you know, but we didn't hear from Jordan Lukaku for the entire second half. He'd been getting, he set up their goal in the first half for Antwerp. He gave us a real hard time. He gave other clubs a hard time all through that Europa League campaign for them, and he was a memory. The minute Nathan Patterson outstripped him and scored that goal. So we've got a boy back. Well, hopefully we've saved the boy's career. We've saved his mental health, and we've got ourselves a player as well. It's and I think that was one of the moments you just thought, yeah, what a manager.
Yeah, well, I think that anyway, to be honest. You know what I mean?
We're back. You know what I mean?
My man love for Steven Gerrard, there isn't a scale that can measure it, to be honest with you.
Aye.
Ianis Hagi was sort of wheeled out today for the press conference. He was a player that sort of took on the press duties today. And I thought that would provide a good chance to talk about him, because I kind of feel, you know, at the early stage of the season towards Christmas, it's getting a wee bit of criticism, you know, people questioning, you know, his contribution and then, you know, if he was worth the money and all that kind of a thing. Feels that he's, and I think he was quietly doing the job anyway, because his numbers kind of stacked up. His numbers stacked up more than what it felt you were seeing in terms of his performances, if you know what I mean. But it does feel that recently he's starting to really have an impact in games and becoming a really, really important player for us. And another one that you feel that if we can develop properly, you know, we can get a good bit of money back, you know, if and when the time comes in that he moves on.
Aye, I think he's got a real depth to his game now. I think it's becoming apparent that he's got a real depth to his game, and he's also providing real depth to the squad. There's a kind of a real texture about us now. It's like we can take. I know we've conceded, like suddenly we're conceding, you know, 2 goals a game. The last 3 games we're kind of averaging a concession of 2 goals a game, and nobody cares because we're banging in, you know, 4 and 5.
Yeah,
and it's the same with the squad. You know, we'll always have a scapegoat. It's like a kind of rotation thing. There'll be scapegoat. There'll be somebody who's no pulling their weight, but there's somebody who's stepping in and stepped up and is becoming a player again. We've seen it with Aribo. We've seen it with, you know, Alfie, you know, getting slagged for not scoring enough goals, and then he's laying on plenty of goals, and now he's scoring the goals. And I think Hagi's a great case in point. I think him, Aribo, and Itten all come on second half in that game against Motherwell, who were down 1-0 at Ibrox in December. And for me, that's always going to be the game when I realised we had everything in place. We had the mental capacity to cope with everything. You know, that was the day that was the day I thought we sealed the title that we were going to win it, but it was the day I knew we could. This was real.
Yeah.
You know, we could cope with anything. And he played a massive part in that. I think he came on maybe an hour into the game or something like that, and it's one of the 3 goals we then scored in the last 20 minutes after all these 3 were on. I think he flicks the ball up over, he scoops it up over somebody, you know, just kind of arrogant almost, but beautiful, and it leads to a goal. You know, there's an end product. And right, we've got the other night with that one of the most beautiful goals I've ever seen Rangers score in my entire life. Again in Europe, you know, that the 3rd goal where we go 3-1 up against Royal Antwerp. Yeah. You know, and Hagi, you were talking about it beautifully on Sunday. The boys were talking about it beautifully in the pod on Sunday about how that wee swivel of the hips, he takes 2 guys out and he plays the ball through. But see the Nathan Patterson's goal. I think it's Kamara hits the ball straight to Hagi, and it's an even more subtle turn. He just kind of nudges people. He nudges a couple of guys out the way. He just creates a channel for the ball to go straight through to Alfie, and everybody remembers a lovely ball Alfie plays into Patterson's feet. But it's wee things like that we've maybe not picked up on before because a few people have been on his back or whatever. But he's doing things that are just pivotal to any team that wants to win big games. He played that game, as I say, against Motherwell at Ibrox. He came on as a sub with maybe half an hour to go. It was fantastic. And then you get the start against St Johnstone the following midweek in Perth. And he had a great game. And St Johnstone were put in the boot. And I don't know if that's maybe what might have led to Kamar Roof's, what he did with Murray Davidson. Maybe that's in the back of his mind. He had to defend himself because Roof started that game as well. And St Johnstone were quite brutal that night. They were putting the boot in early doors. And Hagi loved it. And I always like that. I always like to see a player. He was enjoying it. He was getting just angry enough to get into the game, scored against them, and just had a cracking game. And I think from that moment on, he's just been a proper player.
Yeah. He's someone I'd certainly think. I mean, I don't think he was doing much wrong, to be honest with you. I think people felt he was maybe anonymous in games. But as I said, it was maybe about September, October time. I looked at his numbers and I thought, Jesus Christ. I mean, he's actually, in terms of assists and goals, he is actually chipping in. And it didn't feel that the comments and people's views of him matched what the numbers were. And I think he's just becoming more involved in games now. He's sort of grabbing games with the scruff of the neck and just standing out a wee bit more. And people are actually starting to understand that we have a proper player. Final point before we go tonight, Alex, it's, as I said earlier on, we're into March. We've got the opportunity to secure the title this month. Could secure the title by this time on Sunday. You know what I mean? If results go certain ways. Is it given that we're still in the Europa League, and we've got a good winnable tie. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to win it by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly I think it presents a better opportunity to get to the quarterfinals than Bayer Leverkusen gave us last season. So is it all about trying to get that title over the line as soon as we can, and then that maybe allows us to, rest players a wee bit more and use the squad a wee bit more in terms of who we're going to play in the Europa League? Because I think it was you that gave us the start that, that the last time Rangers had won the league but we're still in Europe was fucking a long time ago. You know what I mean? So it's real uncertain territory we're going into here, you know what I mean? And it could benefit us in terms of keeping players fresh if we go on a sort of prolonged run in the Europa League.
I think you've got to be careful with my stats. I would check them out independently. Anybody, don't go quoting me to your pals. You'll get slapped down. I'm usually 9 times out of 10 I'm completely wrong. But I feel I had a quick check and it looks like 1961 is the last time we won the title while we were still in Europe. And basically European football had only been in, as we know it just now, only been invented 6 years before. So it'll be the only time we've done it. But I'm more. Again, I keep mentioning the word psychology as if I'm some sort of kind of psychologist, and I really am not. But I think it's the emotional weight of winning this title. This is a title like no other that we've wanted for so long. I don't think any of us imagined it would come like this. I think we always thought it was going to be a last day of the season. After years of clawing back, Celtic eventually we would it'd be a last day of the season finish, and the Ibrox would be packed and it'll be hysterical and it'd be fantastic. And it's been like, I don't know, air coming out of a tyre, a slow puncture or something. It's just been a slow kind of, this is happening. This is actually happening. But I still think, and Stephen Gerrard mentioned it today in his press conference, that it's got to he just wants to get it over the line as quickly as possible. And I think that it would let the players concentrate on the Europa League. And the Scottish Cup, because that's
Frankie was saying. That looks like it's back on. So
I don't know about you, mate. Do you want the Scottish Cup to get played this season?
I want the Eurovision Song Contest, mate. I want the fucking lot. I want everything we can win. You know what I mean? I want Peter Lawwell and Neil Lennon in our trophy cabinet at the end of the season. We've won them all. You know what I mean? That's what I want.
Aye, well, I don't. I'm the opposite of you. I'm the other mental extreme. What's happened to me over the last 10 years is I'm just like, I just want 55 framed, and I don't want any the possibility of anything happening after that could let anybody give us a wee slagging at the end of the season or anything. And that's a coward's way out. That is just, you're right, you've got to go for it, you've got to want to win everything. And Europe, I think that would suit us better. I think I was all set up for actually finishing the season unbeaten would make that would be our kind of Scottish Cup. That would be a kind of add-on, kind of off the books record, almost just like something we could go for to keep ourselves going while we're playing in Europe. Scottish Cup, I'm just thinking injuries, whatever. And do you know what it is? I always imagined when we did win the league finally, because when we grew up, Rangers always won the League Cup. We always won the League Cup, and I thought what will happen is we'll win the League Cup. Then we'll win the league title, and then Celtic will beat us in the cup final just to be annoying, just to show that they're still around. And that's fine. We'll win the treble the following season. But I think I was so locked down in that kind of 1988-89 scenario that I'm thinking I don't want the Scottish Cup. Just let us finish 55, and the rest is Europe and staying unbeaten. But you're quite right. Just take it on, because this is a magical season, and I just wouldn't put anything beyond this Rangers team. But I love the idea of us having the league sorted out before. Plus, it's too long a wait. The 21st. I do want to win it at Parkhead, though. I do want to officially seal it at Parkhead. I must admit. That'd be a lovely.
I think if you win the next two games, they'll drop points on Sunday.
Probably on purpose.
That's what I'm alluding to. You know what I mean? But we'll see. I think it's imminent, though. It's looking like it'll go over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully that's all good. Alex, that's us. We've kind of just run out of time there. So big thanks to you for your contribution there. So that's all for tonight's preview show for the Livingston game of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast made by fans for fans. We'll try again to get a show out on Friday night. Who are we playing on Saturday?
St Mum.
I should know that, That's pretty bad.
We're not getting beat anyway, doesn't matter.
We'll try and get a show out on Friday to preview the St Mirren game, and obviously we'll have the flagship show on Sunday. In the meantime, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forums on www.gersnet.co.uk. As I say every week, guys, stay safe, and until Friday or Sunday, bye for now.